changes, with the technological changes, the tools that are utilized, and policies, come changes in training standards, training requirements. And, I'm not unfamiliar with, adapting and evolving environments that dictate training standards. And so for me, when I was in the Marine Corps, I joined it early at the beginning of the wars in the Middle East. So there was a rapid shift in training to counterinsurgency tactics, counter IEDs, cultural training in customs and language, religion. And early in the war, the focus on the ROE's rules of engagement was overwhelming force to dismantle terrorist networks. And over time, that shifted. The focus was more on building community trust, right? Stimulating the local economies, minimizing civilian casualties, the real hearts and minds stuff. And it went from Iraqi freedom, enduring freedom, to Operation Resolute Support. And essentially went from the ROE went from, if he has a gun, shoot him, to, well, the use of force should be proportional to the threat posed, because come to find out, villagers also carried rifles to protect their communities. So there was an evolution for the ROE, the rules of engagement, to eventually require clear justification for engaging threats. And so in parallel, I see, and in essence, the military ROE, rules of engagement, and the LE tactical evolution from shoot, don't shoot, to use of force, to now de-escalation. And so these simulators have a heavy focus on the aspects of training communication and human behavior and critical thought and decision making. So we'll come back to the de-escalation, but if you don't mind, let's go back to the shoot, don't shoot era. And I'd like to understand, and if you could walk me through, how did we go from this shoot, don't shoot to use of force to now de-escalation?
Yeah, right. I guess the easiest way to sum up what you just said is like there's no diamonds without pressure, right? the old expression. And it's funny you should bring that up because in my days when I was working as a shift commander, I was also our team commander for SWAT. I had a friend that was going to Purdue that was also in the SEAL teams, and so we got into an interesting conversation about tactics and how tactics evolve. And this kind of goes back to the earlier point. And just like you said, when in his first deployment, when they were in Baghdad, it was, you're getting your high value targets. They're going in with an overwhelming force, blowing things up. And he said it wasn't the ingress that was the problem. It was the egress, because the enemy quickly adapted to their tactics, and they were announcing, even though they were coming in at night and using what we would call, right, speed, surprise, and overwhelming force. SWAT tactics were very similar. They realized that, well, maybe this isn't the best. Way, because they were getting heavy contact when they were on their egress. And so that's, the enemy adapted to them. And policing tactics have done the same. We've gone from, our narcotics raids where, we're no knock warrants, where we bust down doors and try to get into the house as quick as you can, overwhelm a house. And for what reason? One, yeah, sure, there's an element of safety there, but sadly, a lot of the driver was, well, we knew the dope was going in the toilet. So you had a plan for how fast you could get there to make sure that you were capturing evidence. And with that, you really compromised a lot of opportunities for improved safety, and not just for team members going in, but for those that were in the house. Right. And so rules of engagement are often changed because of the things that we do wrong, right? We call those policymakers in policing. And oftentimes policy is downstream of lawsuits and other things, which are downstream of, tactics and things that maybe aren't the best anyway. Sometimes they are, sometimes they're not, but I think in the end, what it forces us all to do is just try to be more discerning and get better at our craft, become professionals. It's easy to go in and break things. But when you do that, right, you're not really winning, what they call it, with the hearts and minds. And in policing, we did the same thing in the 80s and the 90s. We would do these saturation patrols, heavy-handed tactics where you go into neighborhoods where there's problems. And if you're not, really precise and strategic about what you're doing, you can wind up creating more enemies in neighborhoods than allies. And in policing, and just like what you're doing uh, in any environment, is you're trying to get information. You're trying to get the best information you can as early as you can, because that's what drives good decision making. So, yeah, that's a long way of saying everything evolves, but that's really for the better. And there's a say. I'm sure the saying is in the military and other places as well, but we joke about in policing, right? The two things that cops hate the most are change and the way things are, and
Yeah.
and so any change always comes with a period of adjustment
Hmm.
and adaptation.